When it comes to Pokemon collectibles, the card game and video games get the most attention, but there are many other valuable items out there. Believe it or not, Pokemon figures are rather sought after. However, there are so many different brands and lines that it can get confusing knowing which ones to collect. In this video, we will give you a rundown on most of the major lines of Pokemon figures that have come out. We'll cover the ones that were released nearly 25 years ago, as well as the ones available on store shelves today. Let's get started. The first line of figures we'll look at are the very first Pokemon toys, the Tomy Oldie figures. Released around 1996, these figures only came in Japanese packaging. They are pretty easy to identify when sealed. However, open figures can get confused with the later Tomy figures since they look pretty much identical. The easiest way to tell the difference is by looking for the words Oldie on the copyright stamp. It's interesting to know that the Tomy Oldie figure line did not complete all 151 of the original Pokemon. Of course, Tomy would fix that when they released the CGTSJ line, which is what we'll cover next. The most famous line of vintage Pokemon figures is the aforementioned Tomy CGTSJ line. We've been collecting Pokemon figures for decades and still don't know what the letters C, G, T, S, and J stand for. You see these letters not only on Tomy figures, but Bandai figures as well. The majority of them were made in the 90s and even the early 2000s. The CGTSJ line became popular when Tomy distributed them through Hasbro in North America as battle figures from 1998 to 2003. A lot of these figures came in the classic blue and red blizzard that you might have remembered seeing on store shelves. The majority of them also came with a translucent Master Ball, battle discs, or Pogs, which is how we like to call them, and a plastic Game Boy looking toy with a shooting Pokeball mechanism. Although the packaging had the Hasbro logo on it, they were 100% made by Tomy. During this era, Hasbro had a few other toy lines distributed from Japan, such as electronic talking figures and tiny mystery pack figures. Hasbro also had their own line of figures such as the large combat figures and the Think Chip interactive toys. Hasbro would later add even more lines like the deluxe trainer figures and the V Trainer line. In 2003, Tomy started distributing figures themselves to North America and other regions, which was when Hasbro started producing their own line of figures called Pokémon Advance. The Pokémon Advance branding removed the Advance wording and simply became Pokémon in 2004. And in 2005, Hasbro had its last wave of figures before they lost the license to distribute and produce Pokemon toys to the States. Over the years, Tomy figures evolved and would lose the CGTSJ stamp, but the quality kept improving. The main line of Tomy figures was simply called Monster Collection, which was started since the beginning with the first Tomy Oldie figures. The Monster Collection line would later be shortened to Mon-Collet. However, many other ways would revert back to the Monster Collection name and vice versa. Whether it's Mon-Collet or Monster Collection, they're essentially the same line of Tomy figures we all know and love. Tomy figures distributed outside Japan, primarily North America, did not use the Monster Collection or Mon-Collet branding. Instead, it was simply Pokemon by Tomy. These figures did not include the battle figure branding that we're accustomed to in the late 90s and early 2000s. However, it was easy to tell they continued the line that Hasbro started in 1998. Besides the main Monster Collection line, Tomy also made the Zuken figures. The big difference between these figures and Monster Collection is the size. First off, they are in 1/40 scale. This is a very small scale where figures can end up being smaller than 1 inch. So unlike Monster Collection where all figures are typically the same size no matter what Pokemon it is, the Zuken versions actually represent the size of the Pokemon in the game. There's probably more information on these figures, however we do not collect them, so we probably might have left a few things out. Before we move to the next brand, we like to point out that you will notice us comparing other brands' quality to Tomy. That's because Tomy set the standard on how a good Pokemon figure should look like. So with that out of the way, let's move to our next line, Bandai. The earliest Bandai Pokemon figures were actually finger puppets. They are more commonly known and branded as Pokemon Kids finger puppet figures. There are hundreds of these toys and they were around pretty much when Tomy started producing figures in 1996. Because they are essentially finger puppets, you might think their quality is bad, but it's actually very good. These figures are easy to identify as you will see the Bandai name imprinted on them as well as the year. The earlier versions also have the CGTSJ stamp just like the older Tomy figures. Pokemon Kids finger puppets are very affordable to collect, and Bandai still produces them today. But that's not all Bandai has made. There are many other lines that were produced by the brand over the years. Some to note are the Shoto figures and Scale World, which is a line very much like Zuken figures. Bandai has so many different lines of Pokemon figures, so we're probably leaving out a few others. We'll get to Bandai in more detail in another video. Many of you may remember the keychain figures. There were quite a few of them, but the most popular brand of keychains were made by Basic Fun. Debuted in 1999, Basic Fun released a series of keychain figures that also included a Pokeball. There were a total of 25 waves before being discontinued in 2011. You can find a lot of these figures without the chain attached. These can confuse collectors thinking they might be counterfeits, since they're smaller than the regular 2-inch Tomy figures and aren't as good in quality. However, savvy collectors will know these keychain figures go for a decent price. The easiest way to identify them as a legitimate licensed product is by checking for the letters BFI imprinted on the copyright stamp. Even though the Basic Fun figures aren't as good as Tomy and Bandai, they are still nice to collect, especially as a full set with keychain and Pokeball. Another small figure line that can be mistaken for counterfeits are the Sasko figures. These were promotional toys that came in Kellogg's food products between the years of 1999 and 2001. Even though these were free promotional toys you can get in a cereal box, the quality was actually very good. They also kind of matched the size of the iconic Tomy versions. However, we think the weakest one of the bunch is Charmander. It looks a little off and can sometimes be mistaken for a counterfeit. Overall, they are all in pretty good quality and are very nostalgic. Speaking of promotional toys, let's cover a few more. In the last 25 years, fast food restaurants have come out with many different kinds of Pokemon Kids meal toys. KFC, Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's, and probably other chains all had their opportunity to get on the Pokemon bandwagon. These toys are pretty easy to identify because of their lower quality and larger size. However, many Pokemon collectors still want to complete these sets. We won't go into any more detail on these as there are tons of different lines, but we will revisit them more closely in a future video. In 2008, the Pokemon trading card game introduced its first exclusive figures that were included in some of their products. These were matte painted and tend to come slightly smaller than Tomy figures. The quality is very good, however, they aren't as sought after as Tomy, but some do go for a hefty price. There are at least 50 or more different varieties. If you collect Pokemon cards, make sure to hold on to the other accessories like the figures, as they can sometimes be worth more than the cards they came with. We'd also like to point out that some of the Pokemon video games came out with exclusive figures. They look just like the TCG figures, however, they go for a lot more in price than their TCG counterparts. Let's not forget about the Pokemon trading figure game. These actually came out before the TCG game released their very first figures. We never played the game, but the figures are really cool looking and are in good quality just like the trading card game versions. Someday we'll take a closer look at them because they're very interesting. Jakks Pacific started releasing their own line of Pokemon figures in 2007. They are a little larger, standing between 3 inches to 4 inches in size, and some even come with articulation. Most of these figures are from Generation 1, 4, and 5, but figures from other generations were made as well. The quality on this line is very good, but most of them aren't as valuable as Tomy figures. However, there are always exceptions such as Ghastly, which can go for a hefty price. The most recent line that is readily available at local stores is by WCT, which stands for Wicked Cool Toys. At first, the quality was poor, especially on the Detective Pikachu figures. However, they have steadily improved. Each time they released a new set, we were impressed. They are about the same size as Tomy's Monster Collection line, which is a smart move as collectors will want to continue the continuity on their Tomy figures. However, if you look closer you can tell the difference, especially the plastic material they're made out of and the paint application. Our biggest gripe is the inconsistency, but we're confident they'll fix that because Wicked Cool Toys, which is a subsidiary of Jazzwares, is an awesome toy brand. The last line we'll cover isn't a brand, it's actually a whole category. Bootlegs and counterfeits are always a problem in almost every collectible hobby. If you think the Pokemon trading card game is full of counterfeit cards, then you need to check out the toys. There are a ton of fakes out there, so you really gotta double check when buying them. Even vendors will get them confused, so make sure to always buy from a reputable store and double check, as even the good stores can make a mistake. Some bootlegs are obvious to spot, like these tiny ugly looking ones, while others try to copy official branded figures right down to a T. We personally like covering counterfeits, so you may see a few videos about them in the future. Well, that's it. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to information on Pokemon figures, so we may not have covered every single line that's out there, but the ones we did is something all Pokemon collectors should know. Some of you may be wondering if you've seen a video similar to this one before, and that is true. But because we started a new channel dedicated specifically to Pokemon, we felt like it would help to not only re-release the video, but to update it as well. If you enjoyed this video, please support us by giving it a like, leaving a comment, and subscribing to our channel. We will have more Pokemon videos just like this one, so we hope to see you again. Thanks for watching.